Hello again, folks. Skillful Mission here, and welcome back to my channel. And today we are continuing our journey in the new series that I've created called The Judges. And we're going to be looking today at the second judge that Israel had, and his name was Ehud. But first, folks, if you did not watch the first episode talking about Othniel, the first judge of Israel, go click the link right up here. I put it up there so you can go watch the first episode before this one. I highly encourage you folks to do that first. So, like I said, folks, today we're going to be talking about Ehud, and he was the second judge of Israel after Othniel died. And so, let's just get right into it, folks. So, to start, where we're going to start is obviously in the book of Judges, and we're going to be in chapter 3, and we're going to start at verse 12, and we're going to read all the way to verse 31. That's where it talks about Ehud in the book of Judges. So, if you have your Bibles, turn to Judges chapter 3, verse 12, and I'm going to start reading right now. And it says, "And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord." Here we go again, folks. So like I said in the first episode, I need you to stay with me because this is going to be happening several times. I know this is going to get irritating. Believe me, I am irritated at how many times Israel does this over and over. But just stay with me, folks. And so, continuing in verse 13, "And he gathered unto him the children of Ammon and Amalek, and went and smote Israel and possessed the city of palm trees." So right now, folks, Eglon is his name. Interesting name. The king of Moab, he worked together with the children of Ammon and Amalek, and they just demolished Israel, and they possessed the city. And the children of Israel, in verse 14, it says, "So the children of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. So for 18 years, Israel is under the king of Moab's iron fist, Eglon. And when you get down to verse 15, folks, "But when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised them up a deliverer." So Israel, for 18 years, they're suffering under Eglon, the king of Moab. And so here they are again, they're repenting of their sins, so they're calling to the Lord for help. And so the Lord raised them up a deliverer. And if you continue on, it says, "Ehud, the son of Gera, a Benjamite, a man left-handed, and by him the children of Israel sent a present unto Eglon, the king of Moab." So here is where we meet Ehud. He is the second judge that the Lord raised up for Israel, and he was of the tribe of Benjamin. And the Bible also mentions that he was left-handed. Now, left-handed is, I guess, something that's pretty spectacular, because I have to agree with that, because most people I meet throughout my life I have met, including myself, we are right-handed, and so left-handed is a pretty interesting ability that some people have, I guess, ability. Okay, and if we continue on in verse 16, "But Ehud made him a dagger, which had two edges of a cubit length." So if you folks were curious how long a cubit is, now approximately, so this is my arm, and so this is where my elbow is right here. They say approximately a cubit is this length right here, half the length of a normal man's arm. So if you folks were wondering, that is the length of a cubit. "And he did gird it up under his raiment upon his right thigh." So Israel has sent Ehud to Eglon, the king of Moab. But what Eglon doesn't know is that Ehud has made him a dagger of a cubit length, and he has hid it in a place where Eglon cannot see it, under his raiment or his clothes, something like that, upon his right thigh over here. And it says in verse 17, "And he brought the present unto Eglon, king of Moab, and Eglon was a very fat man." So here we have Ehud. He's presenting the present that Israel is supposed to give, I guess, annually to Eglon. And so they sent Ehud to do that. Now it says here in the Bible also that Eglon was a very fat man. I've seen some pretty fat people in my life, folks, and this probably is an understatement. Eglon, the Bible says Eglon was a very fat man. I'm sure he was probably really huge, folks, really big. And it says in verse 18, folks, "And when he had made an end to offer the present, he sent away the people that bear the present." Verse 19, "But he himself turned again from the quarries that were by Gilgal, and said, I have a secret errand unto thee, O king. who said, "Keep silence," and all that stood by him went out from him. So basically, Ehud wants to speak to the king in private, share something with him. So Eglon sends all of his, all the people that were in the same room with them out. And so now Ehud and Eglon are all alone. Okay, and verse 20. And Ehud came unto him, and he was sitting in a summer parlor, which he had for himself alone. How fancy. And Ehud said, I have a message from God unto thee. And he arose out of his seat. So here we go. Like I said, folks, Ehud is one of my favorite judges in the Bible, and this is why. This is going to be pretty epic. Stay with me, folks. Verse 21. And Ehud put forth in his left hand, and took the dagger from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. Right here, folks, we're reading Ehud took the dagger that he had made for himself, and he thrust it right into Eglon, the king of Moab's stomach, his belly. Verse 22, and the haft also went in after the blade, and the fat closed upon the blade. Let's stop right there for a second, folks. So basically, when Ehud thrust the blade into Eglon's stomach, Eglon was so fat that the fat, when he stabbed him, was surrounding the blade. So here's a clear indication, folks, that Eglon was probably a really very, very more than normal fat. He was extremely fat. Continuing on in verse 22, so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and the dirt came out. It sounds a little gory, folks, but I think it's pretty awesome the way they describe this. So when Ehud stabbed Eglon, he could not pull the dagger out, and that's amazing right there, folks. Then Ehud went forth through the porch and shut the doors of the parlor upon him and locked them. So basically, folks, Ehud, this judge of Israel, the second judge, has just killed Eglon, the king of Moab, stabbed him in his stomach. And so now Ehud is planning trying to escape right now. So the doors of the parlor where he and Eglon were, he shut them and locked them from the inside. And then verse 24, and when he was gone out, his servants came, and when they saw that, behold, the doors of the parlor were locked, they said, surely he covereth his feet in his summer chamber. So at first, Eglon's servants, they don't think twice about it. The first time when they knock on the door when it's locked, they just probably think he's just enjoying himself, just relaxing. I mean, it is his summer parlor. It's all to himself. So they decide to give him more time and just come back later. And verse 25, and they tarried till they were ashamed, and behold, he opened not the doors of the parlor. Therefore they took a key and opened them, and behold, their Lord was fallen down dead on the earth. So after a while, they were like, okay, this is getting too awkward. We need to see what's going on with him, see if he's all right. So apparently they had a spare key, I guess. So they opened the door, and when they went inside, they found Eglon, the king of Moab, dead on the ground. That's got to be quite a sight. That's got to be quite a sight to see when you open the door and you find your king just lying there on the ground, dead. So we go on to verse 26, and Ehud escaped while they tarried, and passed beyond the quarries, and escaped unto Sherath. So while all this is going on, while all of Eglon's servants find Eglon dead on the floor, Ehud has made his escape. He's escaped, and he unto Sherath. I think I said that right. So Ehud has made his escape. He succeeded in his mission in killing Eglon, the king of Moab. Verse 27, and it came to pass when he was come, that he blew a trumpet in the mountain of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mount, and he before them. So he escaped and succeeded in murdering Eglon. So now he's at this point where he blows a trumpet, and all the armies of Israel are with him. And it says in verse 28, and he said unto them, follow after me, for the Lord hath delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. And they went down after him, and took the fords of Jordan toward Moab, and suffered not a man to pass over. And they slew of Moab at the time 10,000 men, all lusty and all men of valor, and there escaped not a man. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest 80 years. So that was verse 30, folks, where I stopped. Verse 31, I made a mistake. You stop at verse 30, and that's where Ehud's story ends. So basically, folks, after Ehud killed Eglon, king of Moab, he led the armies of Israel against Moab, and they prevailed. They killed so many men, 10,000 men, and there's none of the men of Moab escaped. So Israel, because of Ehud, succeeded and slaughtered Moab, and they were free. And it says here in verse 30, and the land had rest 80 years. So approximately, folks, the nation of Israel had rest for 80 years. 80 years, and after that they had rest because of Ehud. And folks, that is where the story of Ehud, the second judge of Israel, ends. I think this is a pretty amazing story, folks. So it's really quite embarrassing that Israel fell into sin again. They did evil in the sight of the Lord, and Eglon, Moab, they had control of Israel. They oppressed them for 18 years, and then God raises up a deliverer because Israel is called upon the Lord again. And Ehud, this amazing judge, this amazing man, he just really showed Moab who was boss, in a sense. The way he killed Eglon, the king of Moab, was just amazing and pretty gruesome. But you know what, folks? It's what had to be done in order to get Israel free under the control of Moab. So no doubt the Lord was with Ehud and Israel at that time. And so yes, because of Ehud, Israel was free from Moab, and they had rest for 80 years. Until after Ehud dies, I think we know what's going to happen, folks. But like I said, that is the end of Ehud, the second judge of Israel. I hope you folks enjoyed that. I sure did. Definitely one of my favorite judges. If you folks enjoyed this video, leave a like and comment, subscribe, join the Eyes today, and I will see you folks in the next video of whatever I make. Thank you folks so much, and God bless you all. Bye-bye.